luxury, drama, and a jaw-dropping twist. When a high-end boutique manager crossed the line and humiliated Melania Trump, nobody expected what happened next. Her shocking return left everyone speechless. You don't want to miss this story that's taking the internet by storm. Backhand index pointing right, watch now to uncover the unbelievable truth. Speech balloon, if you love captivating stories like this, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales. Let's get started our story. The boutique on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills stood as a beacon of exclusivity. Its gleaming glass doors, framed by pristine white marble, seemed to invite only those worthy of stepping into its inner sanctum of luxury. Inside, every element was meticulously curated to exude sophistication. The soft hum of classical music, the faint scent of expensive vanilla candles, and the strategic placement of spotlights that made each designer handbag and sparkling piece of jewelry glow with an almost ethereal light. For Helena, the boutique manager, this wasn't just a store, it was her stage. And she was its gatekeeper. Tall, poised, and perpetually immaculate, Helena had built her reputation on one unyielding principle: protect the brand. She moved through the boutique with the precision of a conductor orchestrating a symphony. No detail escaped her sharp eyes. If a glass display had a smudge, it was wiped before a customer noticed. If an employee lingered too long in idle chatter, they were swiftly reminded of their duties. Exclusivity isn't just about price, Helena often reminded her staff, her voice clipped and authoritative. It's about image. The staff admired her efficiency, even if they feared her intensity. Her tailored pantsuits and perfectly styled bob haircut made her a walking embodiment of the boutique's ethos. Customers, those fortunate enough to gain entry, sensed her authority immediately. To shop under Helena's watchful gaze was to feel as though you were auditioning for acceptance into an elite world. That Tuesday morning began like any other. Helena arrived early, unlocking the boutique's doors with a sense of ritualistic pride. She moved through the space, ensuring that every display was pristine. Rows of designer handbags were arranged by size and color. Racks of couture dresses stood like soldiers in perfect alignment. The jewelry cases sparkled under the carefully adjusted lighting, each diamond and gemstone positioned to catch the eye. By mid-morning, the boutique hummed quietly, the atmosphere both serene and charged. Helena stationed herself by the entrance, her sharp eyes scanning the room for anything out of place. She observed the customers with practiced ease, noting who lingered too long by the handbags or who appeared hesitant to touch the silk scarves. Her instincts were rarely wrong. The glass doors swung open, and Helena turned her attention to the new arrival. A woman stepped in, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She was tall, poised, and understated in her elegance. She wore a simple cream coat and oversized sunglasses that obscured much of her face. Her hand brushed lightly against a rack of scarves as she moved further into the boutique, her demeanor calm but assured. Helena's eyes narrowed slightly. Something about the woman didn't fit. She wasn't like the boutique's regular clientele, who arrived in flashy designer outfits that loudly proclaimed their status. This woman's ensemble was almost too simple, too restrained. There was no obvious logo, no glittering jewelry to indicate wealth. And yet, she carried herself with an ease that suggested she belonged, or at least believed she did. Helena's instincts kicked in. She approached the woman briskly, her heels clicking with purpose. Her smile was polite but devoid of warmth, the kind of smile designed to disarm without inviting further engagement. "Ma'am," Helena began, her tone smooth but firm. "We have a private shopping appointment scheduled shortly. I'm afraid I'll need to ask you to leave." The woman turned slowly, lowering her sunglasses to reveal piercing blue eyes that caught Helena off guard. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of recognition. Had Helena seen her before? The thought was fleeting, dismissed almost as quickly as it arose. "I assure you, I'll only be a moment," the woman replied in a calm, even tone. "I just wanted to look around." Helena stiffened. Politeness gave way to firm resolve. "I'm sorry, but this is a private establishment. If you'd like to book an appointment, We'd be happy to accommodate you another time. For a brief moment, the woman's expression remained unchanged. Then, without a word, she slid her sunglasses back on and turned to leave. Her heels echoed softly against the floor as she walked out, her departure as poised as her arrival. Helena watched her go, a faint sense of satisfaction settling in her chest. She had done her job. She had protected the brand. But as the glass doors closed behind the woman, Helena felt a faint unease. There had been something in the woman's demeanor, a quiet intensity, an unshaken calm, that lingered in Helena's mind. It was as though the woman knew something Helena didn't. Helena shook off the feeling, turning her attention back to the boutique. Helena watched her go, a faint sense of satisfaction settling over her. She had done her job, protected the exclusivity of the boutique, maintained its image. Yet, as the glass doors closed behind the woman, an unsettling feeling lingered in the back of her mind. There was a quiet intensity in the way the woman carried herself, as though she knew something Helena didn't. Helena shook her head, dismissing the thought. People came and went, some hoping to bluff their way into this world of high-end luxury. She had seen it all. Tourists who didn't understand the by-appointment-only policy, aspiring influencers flaunting fake designer bags, even journalists fishing for gossip. To Helena, this woman was no different. The day wore on, and Helena returned to her routine. She inspected a new shipment of couture dresses, ensuring every hemline was pressed to perfection. She adjusted the lighting on the main jewelry case, making sure each diamond sparkled just so. The boutique was her stage, and she was the director, orchestrating a flawless performance. Yet, as evening approached and Helena locked up the store, the memory of the mysterious woman lingered. Who was she? Helena brushed off the thought as she stepped into the cool Beverly Hills night, but unease settled in her chest. It was a feeling she couldn't quite shake, a premonition of sorts. She didn't know it then, but the woman's quiet departure was only the beginning of a storm that would upend her carefully curated world. Helena arrived at the boutique early the next morning, as she always did. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft, golden light over Rodeo Drive, and the usually bustling street was calm and serene. Helena relished these quiet moments before the boutique opened, a chance to breathe and prepare for the day ahead. She stepped inside, greeted by the familiar scent of fresh-cut flowers arranged meticulously on the counter. The store was spotless, as it should be, its pristine surfaces reflecting her high standards. She began her usual routine, walking through the showroom, checking displays, and ensuring everything was perfect. But something felt different. The air carried a tension she couldn't quite place. By mid-morning, the boutique began to come alive. Sales associates arrived, chatting softly as they prepared for the day. Helena stood near the entrance, her sharp eyes scanning the room. That's when she noticed Sophia, a young, eager sales associate, approaching her with hesitant steps. "Helena," Sophia began, her voice low but tinged with a nervous excitement. "Yes," Helena replied, barely looking up as she reviewed the day's appointments. Sophia glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot before leaning in slightly. "Did you hear about the woman from yesterday?" Helena's head snapped up, her brow furrowing. "What about hers?" Sophia hesitated, her voice dropping even lower. "A customer mentioned something this morning. They said it was Melania Trump." The words hung in the air, heavy and startling. Helena blinked, her expression shifting from skepticism to faint disbelief. "Melania Trump," she repeated, her tone sharp. Sophia nodded earnestly. "Yes. They showed me a picture on their phone. It looked just like her, the sunglasses, the coat, everything." For a moment, Helena was silent, her mind racing. Could it be true? Could the woman she had so curtly dismissed have been one of the most recognizable figures in America? "No," Helena finally said, shaking her head as if to dismiss the thought. "That's impossible. She wouldn't come here unannounced. And certainly not dressed like that." But even as she said the words, a seed of doubt took root. As the day wore on, the whispers spread. Customers arriving for their appointments asked subtle but pointed questions. "Is this the store? One woman inquired as she browsed a rack of handbags, her tone casual but her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "I heard about what happened," another said to her companion, just loud enough for the staff to overhear. Helena tried to maintain her composure, but the constant murmurs grated on her nerves. She could feel the weight of speculation pressing down on her. By the afternoon, the boutique was buzzing with more than just the hum of classical music. Customers spoke in hushed tones, their glances darting toward Helena and the staff. "She looked so elegant," a woman whispered near the jewelry case. "I can't believe someone would treat her like that." "I heard she walked out without saying a word," another chimed in. "So classy, but you just know she was furious." Helena overheard every word, her chest tightening with each passing comment. She clenched her hands, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into her palms. The situation escalated when Sophia approached Helena again later that afternoon, her phone in hand. "You need to see this," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anxiety and urgency. Helena took the phone reluctantly, her stomach churning as she read the screen. It was a social media post, a vague but damning account of the incident. "A certain boutique manager just kicked out one of the most famous women in America," the post read. "Classless behavior in a so-called luxury establishment." Though the boutique wasn't named outright, the comments below were filled with speculation. People tagged brands, some even claiming to know exactly which store it was. Helena's breath hitched. Her hand tightened around the phone as she skimmed through the comments, each one more accusatory than the last. "This is getting out of hand," she muttered, handing the phone back to Sophia. Sophia nodded sympathetically. "I think it's only going to get worse. People are already talking about it." Helena spent the rest of the day trying to focus on her work, but the whispers and speculation were impossible to ignore. Customers lingered longer than usual, not to shop but to gossip. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, their usual efficiency dampened by the growing tension. By evening, as Helena locked up the boutique, the weight of the day's events pressed heavily on her. She walked home in silence, her mind replaying the scene from the day before. The woman's piercing blue eyes, her calm demeanor, the quiet intensity that now seemed so significant. Could she really have been Melania Trump? Helena shook her head as if to dispel the thought, but it clung to her, gnawing at the edges of her confidence. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain. She arrived home, setting her bag down before collapsing onto the couch. Grabbing her phone, she hesitated before opening social media. The post from earlier had gained traction, with more comments and even a few shares from minor influencers. Helena's heart sank. The world of high fashion thrived on reputation, and hers, along with the boutiques, was suddenly under scrutiny. As she scrolled through the endless comments, a chill swept over her. She had always prided herself on her professionalism and judgment, but now those very qualities seemed to be unraveling. Closing her eyes, she whispered to herself, "This will blow over." It has to. But deep down, Helena knew the storm was only just beginning. The atmosphere in the boutique had grown tense by mid-morning. While the store still hummed with its usual blend of soft classical music and the subtle murmur of shoppers, there was a distinct undercurrent of unease among the staff. Helena, ever the epitome of poise, made her rounds with her usual air of control, but her sharp eyes betrayed a hint of distraction. The mysterious woman's departure the previous day, combined with Sophia's startling revelation, was beginning to weigh on her mind. The first ripple of trouble came when a customer approached Sophia with a phone in hand. Helena overheard their animated conversation as she adjusted the lighting on a display of handbags. "I'm telling you it was her," the customer said, gesturing to a photo on her screen. "She's unmistakable. Melania Trump was here yesterday, and she left because of some misunderstanding." Sophia glanced nervously toward Helena, her voice a whisper. "Are you sure? I mean, why would she come here without an appointment?" The customer nodded emphatically. "It's all over social media. People are saying she was treated rudely and asked to leave. If it's true, that's not great for your brand." Helena stiffened. She stepped toward them, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Is there a problem?" She asked coolly, her gaze flicking between Sophia and the customer. The customer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable under Helena's sharp stare. No problem. I was just curious about something I read online. She quickly turned back to browsing, leaving Sophia looking flustered. Helena's jaw tightened as she returned to her station by the cashier counter. A quick glance at her phone confirmed her growing suspicion. A vague but incendiary post on a popular social media platform had begun circulating. A certain high-end boutique on Rodeo Drive just kicked out one of the most famous women in America. Classless behavior for a so-called luxury establishment. Guess exclusivity doesn't mean quality. Though the post didn't name the store outright, the comments were rife with speculation. Some users claimed they knew which boutique it was, and others tagged the store's official account, demanding clarification. Helena's stomach churned as she read through the growing thread. The boutique's pristine reputation, painstakingly cultivated over years, was now under threat. By early afternoon, the situation had escalated. Customers entered the store, not just to shop but to gossip. Whispers floated through the air like an unrelenting tide. I heard the manager was involved, a woman muttered to her companion as they browsed the jewelry case. It must be true. Why else would Melania walk out like that? Her friend replied, glancing toward Helena. Helena's cheeks burned as she pretended not to notice. Her usual composure felt like a fragile shell, ready to crack under the weight of the scrutiny. Every hushed conversation seemed aimed directly at her, every glance a silent accusation. She busied herself with the details of the store, inspecting displays and adjusting lighting. But no amount of micromanaging could quell the storm brewing outside her control. By mid-afternoon, a local news outlet had picked up the story, running a short segment on the alleged incident. Though the report didn't confirm the boutique's identity, it was enough to fuel the fire. Speculation swirled, and the boutique's name began trending online. Helena retreated to her office, her hands trembling as she scrolled through her phone. Her inbox was flooded with messages from corporate. Urgent. Address the social media situation immediately. We need a statement by end of day. Confirm if this involved your location. Call us as soon as possible. Helena felt a wave of panic. The boutique's success wasn't just her livelihood, it was her identity. She had built her career on maintaining an image of perfection, and now that image was crumbling. She tossed her phone onto the desk, burying her face in her hands. By the time she returned to the showroom, the atmosphere had shifted further. Customers were no longer discreet in their curiosity. One woman, holding an iced latte, leaned conspicuously close to the cashier counter and asked, "This is the place, isn't it? The one from the news?" The cashier, Clara, stammered out a polite response, but the damage was done. Helena's authority, once absolute, now felt tenuous. She resisted the urge to snap at the woman and instead focused on maintaining a veneer of control. As the store's doors finally closed that evening, Helena lingered by the entrance, staring out at the quiet street. The buzz of the day echoed in her mind, each whispered word and speculative glance a reminder of her growing crisis. Her phone buzzed again, a notification lighting up the screen. Breaking. Alleged encounter at luxury boutique sparks controversy. Sources speculate Melania Trump was involved. Helena's chest tightened. She knew the boutique's reputation was on the line, and her role in the unfolding drama was undeniable. The weight of her choices pressed heavily on her shoulders as she turned off the lights and locked the doors. The storm was far from over, and she had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The boutique hummed with the usual buzz of activity on that Friday afternoon. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, casting a golden glow over the displays of handbags, jewelry, and couture dresses. Customers moved through the store, their soft murmurs blending with the faint strains of classical music. Sales associates hurried between displays, their polished appearances complementing the store's refined ambience. Helena stood near the cashier counter, her posture as immaculate as ever, her sharp eyes surveying the showroom. Though the whispers about Melania Trump had begun to fade, Helena remained on edge, trying to suppress the lingering unease. She focused on the tasks at hand, adjusting a display of evening gowns, approving a new shipment of accessories, but her composure felt brittle, as if a single gust of wind might shatter it. Then the glass door swung open. The noise, a deliberate, forceful sound, cut through the boutique's serene atmosphere. Heads turned as the woman from earlier in the week stepped inside. This time, there was no mistaking her. Melania Trump stood tall and poised, her presence commanding the room. She wore a fitted black dress, the simplicity of its design emphasizing her elegance. Around her neck sparkled a diamond pendant, catching the light with every slight movement. Oversized sunglasses rested in her hand, and her expression was calm, yet unreadable. Behind her, an entourage followed, two sharply dressed security personnel, a publicist holding a sleek leather briefcase, and another assistant trailing with a tablet. Just outside the boutique's entrance, photographers clamored, their camera flashes reflecting off the glass doors, capturing every second of her arrival. The murmurs among the customers grew into an audible wave of awe and curiosity. Is that really hers? She's even more stunning in person. I can't believe she's here. Helena froze. Her breath caught in her throat, her usual mask of control slipping. Her cheeks flushed as Melania's eyes swept over the room before landing on her. For a moment, their gazes locked. Helena felt an unbearable weight in those piercing blue eyes, not anger, but an air of quiet authority that unnerved her more than any confrontation could. Melania took a step forward, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the otherwise silent boutique. Then, in a voice that was both calm and firm, she spoke. "Good afternoon. I'd like to look around now. Is that allowed?" The question hung in the air, laden with implications. Helena's heart sank further. She opened her mouth to respond but found no words. Instead, she nodded stiffly, stepping aside to let Melania pass. The entire boutique seemed to hold its breath as Melania began to move through the store. She paused at the displays, her fingers brushing over fabrics, her eyes lingering on price tags. The entourage stayed close, though they made no moves to interfere. To Helena, it felt less like shopping and more like an evaluation, a deliberate inspection of the store and its people. Every movement Melania made seemed to amplify the tension in the room. Customers pretended to browse but kept sneaking glances at her, their curiosity barely concealed. Helena's usual confidence had vanished, replaced by a gnawing sense of vulnerability. She watched Melania with a mix of dread and admiration, every step the former First Lady took feeling like a reminder of her earlier mistake. Melania eventually approached the jewelry case, her gaze settling on an elaborate diamond necklace displayed under the lights. She gestured to the nearest sales associate, a young woman named Clara. "May I see this piece?" Melania asked, her tone polite but firm. Clara hesitated for a brief moment, her nerves evident, but quickly retrieved the necklace and placed it on the counter. "Of course, ma'am," she said softly. Melania studied the necklace, her expression thoughtful. Then, without looking up, she asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "What do you think?" She wasn't addressing Clara. Her eyes lifted to meet Helena's across the room. Helena's heart skipped a beat. The room seemed to shrink, and all eyes turned toward her. She stammered, her voice unsteady as she finally spoke. "It's a beautiful piece. One of our finest," she said, though her words felt hollow. Melania nodded slowly, as though considering Helena's response. Then she turned back to Clara. "I'll take it," she said, sliding a sleek black credit card across the counter. Clara quickly completed the transaction, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped the necklace. Melania turned back to Helena one last time, her expression calm but unreadable. "It's important, don't you think?" she said, her voice steady yet cutting, "to treat everyone with respect, especially when you don't know who they are?" Her words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Helena felt as though the ground might give way beneath her feet. She struggled to respond, but Melania didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she gestured to her publicist, who handed her a small envelope. "This is for your staff," Melania said, holding the envelope out to Helena. "A token of appreciation for their professionalism." Helena hesitated, her hands trembling as she accepted the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, and she knew its contents would carry a weight far greater than its physical form. Melania turned back to Clara and offered her a warm smile. "Thank you for your help today. You've been wonderful." With that, she strode toward the door, her entourage following in perfect synchronization. The photographers outside erupted into a frenzy as Melania exited, their cameras capturing every moment. Inside the boutique, the silence was deafening. Customers exchanged stunned whispers, and employees looked to Helena, unsure of what to do. Helena stood motionless, the envelope still in her hand. The shame, the regret, and the realization of her mistake weighed heavily on her. Melania Trump had returned, not to humiliate her, but to teach her a lesson she would never forget. The boutique's doors swung shut, but the impact of her visit lingered, changing the atmosphere of the store and Helena forever. The boutique was bustling with activity, its air filled with the soft rustle of designer fabrics and the faint scent of high-end perfumes. Customers milled about, and employees moved with choreographed precision, ensuring every detail remained flawless. Helena stood near the cashier counter, her usual post, her sharp eyes scanning the floor. She was determined to project her authority despite the unease that lingered from the events of the past few days. Then, the glass doors swung open. It wasn't just a customer entering, it was an event. The atmosphere shifted as a tall, poised figure stepped into the boutique. Melania Trump. The room seemed to hold its breath as she entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. Dressed in a sleek black dress that exuded understated elegance, her diamond earrings caught the light with every step. Behind her, a small entourage followed, including security personnel and a woman clutching a leather briefcase. Outside, photographers clamored for a shot through the glass, their camera flashes creating a strobe effect against the boutique's pristine interior. Helena felt her stomach drop. The flush of embarrassment from that fateful encounter days ago returned with force, leaving her rooted to the spot. She watched as Melania surveyed the room, her gaze calm and assessing. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and Helena's heart sank further. There was no anger in Melania's expression, no sign of vindictiveness. Instead, her composed demeanor carried an unsettling weight, as though she was here not for confrontation but to deliver a pointed lesson. Melania's heels clicked softly on the marble floor as she approached a jewelry case. The tension in the boutique was palpable. Even the customers seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, their movements slowing to watch the scene unfold. At the jewelry counter, Melania paused, her eyes settling on an ornate diamond necklace displayed under the spotlights. "May I see this piece?" she asked, her voice calm but firm, addressing Clara, the young sales associate standing nearby. Clara hesitated for a moment, her hands trembling slightly as she retrieved the necklace and laid it carefully on the counter. "Of course, ma'am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Melania studied the necklace, turning it gently in her hands. Its diamonds sparkled brilliantly under the lights, each facet catching her deliberate inspection. After a moment, she glanced over her shoulder, her piercing blue eyes landing on Helena, who stood a few steps away, frozen in place. "What do you think?" Melania asked, her tone polite yet laced with unmistakable authority. The question caught Helena completely off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. After a pause that felt like an eternity, she managed to stammer, It's a beautiful piece. One of our finest." Melania gave a small nod and turned back to Clara. "I'll take it," she said, sliding a sleek black credit card across the counter. Her decision was final, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. As Clara processed the transaction, Melania's focus shifted back to Helena. Her gaze was steady, and for the first time, Helena felt truly exposed. Then Melania spoke, her words deliberate and measured. "It's important, don't you think," she began, her voice carrying easily across the hushed room, "to treat everyone with respect? Especially when you don't know who they are." The boutique fell into a profound silence. The customers, the staff, Even the soft classical music playing in the background seemed to pause. Helena's cheeks burned as the weight of the words settled on her. She wanted to respond, to explain, to apologize, but no words came. She could only nod slightly, her composure cracking under the scrutiny of everyone present. Melania didn't wait for a reply. Instead, she gestured toward her publicist, who stepped forward and handed her a sleek, white envelope. Turning back to Helena, Melania extended it with a serene expression. "This is for your staff," she said simply. A token of appreciation for their professionalism. Helena hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the envelope. It was heavier than she expected, and the gesture caught her completely off guard. She struggled to find her voice. "Thank you," she managed, though the words felt inadequate. Melania offered a small, almost imperceptible smile before turning her attention back to Clara. "Thank you for your assistance today. You've been wonderful," she said warmly, her tone carrying a genuine kindness. Clara blushed, her nerves giving way to a shy smile. "It was my pleasure, ma'am." With that, Melania turned and made her way toward the exit, her entourage falling into step behind her. The photographers outside sprang into action, their cameras capturing every moment of her departure. Inside, the boutique remained silent, the weight of her visit lingering long after she had gone. Helena stood by the counter, the envelope still in her hand, her mind racing. She had been reprimanded in the most graceful yet cutting way possible. Melania's actions spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. The combination of her calm demeanor, her generous gift, and her poignant words left Helena grappling with a realization. She had failed, not just as a manager, but as a person. The exclusivity she prided herself on had blinded her to the core values of respect and kindness. The employees began whispering among themselves, their awe at what had transpired mingling with curiosity about what was in the envelope. Helena retreated to her office, closing the door behind her. She sat at her desk and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check, a staggering sum intended to be distributed among the staff. The generosity of the gesture was humbling, a stark contrast to the subtle reprimand she had received moments earlier. Helena leaned back in her chair, the check resting in her lap. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of shame, regret, and determination. Melania's words echoed in her mind. It's important to treat everyone with respect, especially when you don't know who they are. For the first time in her career, Helena felt the weight of her position not as a privilege, but as a responsibility. She resolved that this would be the turning point, not just for her, but for the boutique as a whole. She had been given a second chance, and she intended to make the most of it. This was the lesson she needed to learn. The morning sun was barely rising, casting a golden glow over Rodeo Drive as Helena arrived at the boutique earlier than usual. The quiet street felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos of the previous days. For the first time in years, her steps faltered as she approached the pristine glass doors she had passed through with confidence so many times before. This time, she felt exposed, her meticulously constructed persona of authority and poise shaken to its core. Inside, the boutique was silent, its opulent displays waiting for the first customers of the day. Helena walked through the store slowly, her sharp eyes no longer scanning for imperfections in the decor, but instead reflecting on the imperfections within herself. She stopped in front of the jewelry case, the spot where Melania Trump had delivered her quiet but cutting words. They echoed in Helena's mind. It's important, don't you think, to treat everyone with respect, especially when you don't know who they are? Her chest tightened. Helena prided herself on her professionalism, her ability to maintain the boutique's exclusivity, but now she saw the cracks in her philosophy. She had dismissed a woman not based on her behavior but on an assumption, a decision born of arrogance, not professionalism. Helena stepped into her office and sat down at her desk. The envelope Melania had handed her sat unopened on the sleek mahogany surface. It was heavier than she expected. With trembling hands, she tore it open and pulled out the contents. A check. Her breath caught as she read the amount, enough to make a significant impact on the lives of every employee at the boutique. A surge of emotion overwhelmed her. It wasn't just the money that moved her. It was the generosity behind it, the contrast between her own actions and Melania's gesture. While Helena had acted to protect an image of exclusivity, Melania had shown what true grace looked like. It was a humbling realization. Determined to take the first step toward making amends, Helena called an impromptu staff meeting. By the time the employees gathered in the small lounge area at the back of the boutique, curiosity and concern were evident in their faces. Clara, Sophia, and the others exchanged glances, clearly sensing a shift in Helena's demeanor. Helena stood at the front of the room, her usual commanding presence softened. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I owe all of you an apology," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Yesterday, I made a mistake, a serious one. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment, and I treated someone unfairly. In doing so, I not only failed that person but also failed all of you." The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "For years, I've believed that protecting this brand meant enforcing rules and upholding an image. But I lost sight of something far more important: respect. Respect for every person who walks through those doors, regardless of who they are or what they appear to be. That's not the kind of leader I want to be, and it's not the kind of example I want to set." She paused, scanning the faces of her team. Some looked surprised. Others appeared thoughtful. Clara met her gaze with a small, encouraging nod. Helena continued, her voice stronger now. "We have an opportunity to learn from this. Respect and kindness shouldn't depend on who someone is or who we think they are. I needed to relearn that lesson, and I hope we can all carry it forward together." She stepped forward and placed the envelope on the table in front of her. "This check is for all of you," she said, her voice softening. "It's a gift from Melania Trump, a testament to how well you handled a situation I mishandled. You stayed professional and graceful in the face of my shortcomings, and you deserve this." A ripple of surprise moved through the group. Clara, who had been the most directly involved, spoke up. "Thank you, Helena. I think we all learned something yesterday." Helena nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for their understanding. She had feared judgment or resentment from her team, but instead, she found support. As the employees returned to their stations, the atmosphere in the boutique felt different. Lighter, more hopeful. Helena watched them with a newfound appreciation, realizing that leadership wasn't about perfection but about humility and growth. Later that day, as Helena stood by the entrance, she observed a customer entering, a young woman in simple attire, her eyes wide with awe at the opulence around her. Helena's first instinct was to assess whether she belonged, but she stopped herself. She stepped forward with a genuine smile, ready to welcome her as she would anyone else. For the first time in years, Helena felt truly at peace, knowing that she wasn't just protecting the brand anymore, she was helping to redefine it. The boutique on Rodeo Drive began its day as it always did, with the soft hum of classical music and the gentle clinking of glass displays as employees prepared for the arrival of customers. Yet, something felt different. The air seemed lighter, as though the tension that had gripped the store for days had begun to dissipate. Helena arrived early that morning, her steps measured but purposeful. For the first time in years, she didn't start her day by inspecting the glass counters for smudges or rearranging the jewelry displays. Instead, she gathered her team for a quick meeting, her tone less authoritative and more conversational. "Today," she began, "is about change. For all of us." Her eyes scanned the group, taking in the mixture of curiosity and quiet support in their faces. Clara, the junior associate who had been the picture of grace during Melania's visit, gave her small, encouraging smile. Helena felt a flicker of warmth. She had often viewed her staff as mere extensions of the boutique's image, expecting perfection without truly seeing the people behind the roles. That morning, she resolved to change that. As the boutique opened its doors to customers, Helena stationed herself not by the entrance, as she had done so many times before, but near the heart of the store. She wanted to observe, not from a position of judgment, but from a place of understanding. Her sharp eyes, once trained to spot imperfections, now softened as she watched customers explore the displays. Each visitor was no longer a potential disruption to the boutique's image, but an individual with their own story. Helena's first test came within the hour. A young woman entered, her outfit simple and unassuming, her steps hesitant. In the past, Helena might have raised an eyebrow, immediately questioning whether this customer belonged. Instead, she approached with a warm smile. "Good morning," she said gently. "Is there something I can help you find today?" The woman's eyes widened, as though surprised by the kindness. "Oh, I'm just looking," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Helena nodded. "Take your time. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know." Then she stepped back, giving the woman space. It was a small interaction, but as Helena watched the woman's shoulders relax and her steps grow more confident, she realized the power of such moments. Respect, she understood now, wasn't a luxury to be reserved for a select few. It was the foundation of true service. Throughout the day, Helena found herself noticing things she had overlooked before. A man in a tailored suit lingered by the watches, clearly torn between two options. Helena approached, not to upsell him but to genuinely help. "That's a fine choice," she said, gesturing to one of the watches he held. "It's classic, but the detailing gives it a modern touch. Is this for a special occasion?" The man smiled, his tension easing. "My anniversary," he admitted. Helena's smile deepened. "Congratulations. Let me know if you'd like me to arrange for a personalized engraving." The offer, sincere and thoughtful, brought a spark of gratitude to the man's face. By mid-afternoon, the boutique buzzed with a steady flow of customers. Helena's staff seemed to follow her lead, their interactions with clients infused with newfound warmth. Clara assisted a group of friends shopping for an upcoming gala, her laughter genuine as she helped them select matching accessories. Sophia, one of the senior associates, took extra time explaining the craftsmanship behind a collection of handbags to a curious customer. The boutique, once a stage for exclusivity, now felt alive with connection. Helena's transformation didn't go unnoticed. Regular clients, accustomed to her distant demeanor, commented on her approachability. "You seem different today," one remarked as Helena helped her select a necklace. "It's nice. More personal." Helena took the compliment with quiet gratitude, knowing it was a reflection of her commitment to change. As the day wound down, Helena found herself standing by the entrance, watching the last of the customers leave. Clara joined her, a content smile on her face. "It was a good day," she said. Helena nodded. "It was." She glanced at Clara, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you for everything. You've taught me more than you realize." Clara looked surprised but pleased. "We're a team," she replied simply. Helena's heart swelled with a sense of pride and humility. For so long, she had seen leadership as control, as maintaining an unyielding standard. Now, she understood it was about trust, respect, and the willingness to grow. The boutique would always be a place of luxury, but it could also be a place of kindness. That, Helena realized, was the true mark of exclusivity, not shutting people out, but welcoming them in with dignity and grace. As she locked the doors that evening, Helena paused to take one last look at the store. The gleaming displays and pristine marble floors were the same, but the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't just a boutique anymore. It was a reflection of the lessons she had learned and the values she now held dear. With a quiet smile, she turned off the lights and stepped into the cool night, ready to embrace whatever came next. After the dust settled, the boutique began to regain its usual rhythm. The frenzy of social media posts and local news coverage faded from the headlines, replaced by new stories, new gossip, and the ever-changing tides of celebrity and luxury. But for Helena and the staff at the boutique, the events that had unfolded in the past few days were far from over. The ripple effect of Melania Trump's visit had reverberated through the world they inhabited, altering not just the boutique's reputation but Helena herself. The boutique had always been a symbol of privilege, a place where high-end fashion and status merged seamlessly. Its reputation was built on exclusivity, and until the recent incident, that exclusivity had been the cornerstone of its identity. But now, the meaning of luxury had taken on new dimensions for Helena. She had always viewed luxury as something tangible: expensive handbags, rare jewelry, and couture dresses. Now, she understood that true luxury was something far more intangible: respect, kindness, and human connection. It wasn't about who could afford to shop there. It was about how they were treated when they walked through the door. The next few days passed in a quiet sort of tension. Customers still came, some hopeful that the boutique would offer them an experience worthy of their wealth, others drawn by the whispers of what had happened in the days prior. There was still an air of curiosity, but now there was something else, too: a growing sense of anticipation. Helena was aware that this was her chance to rebuild, to redefine what the boutique stood for, not just in the eyes of its patrons, but in the eyes of her team and herself. Helena made a conscious effort to be present with her staff, to listen to their concerns, and to acknowledge the lessons learned in the wake of her mistake. She could see it in their eyes, the subtle shift from apprehension to cautious optimism. There was a quiet respect that had begun to take root, not just for her as a manager, but for her willingness to face her shortcomings. It wasn't easy to admit she had been wrong. In the high-stakes world of luxury fashion, where perception was everything, it felt like a vulnerable admission to make. But it was one that would prove to be a turning point for her and for the boutique. One morning, after a busy rush of customers, Clara, the junior employee who had been the most directly involved with Melania's visit, approached Helena in the back office. The young woman's face was still marked by the quiet awe of someone who had witnessed an unforgettable moment, yet there was something different in her expression now, a look of understanding that spoke volumes. "You're not the same person you were last week," Clara said, her voice low, but filled with sincerity. "I think we all saw that. We felt it." Helena smiled faintly, her heart warming at Clara's words. It wasn't often that she allowed herself to be vulnerable in front of her employees, but Clara's honesty was a reminder of the kind of leadership she had always hoped to offer. "I've had to do a lot of thinking," she admitted, "about who I want to be and what kind of example I want to set." Clara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "You're showing us what it means to lead with integrity." It was in that moment, in the quiet of the boutique's back office, that Helena realized just how much the staff had grown alongside her. They had all weathered the storm together, and while the incident with Melania had been difficult, it had also created an opportunity for growth. The team was stronger now, more cohesive, and more attuned to the values that Helena was striving to instill: respect, humility, and inclusivity. Helena's leadership took on a new form in the days that followed. She began incorporating lessons about respect into the staff's daily routines, emphasizing that their roles were about more than just sales or customer service. The boutique was a place where relationships were built, not only between the store and its clients, but also among the employees themselves. There was no room for elitism or judgment, at least not in the way it had been before. The store's atmosphere began to shift subtly but undeniably. Staff members became more engaged with customers, taking the time to listen to their stories and understand their needs. The usual air of quiet exclusivity remained, but now it was balanced with a newfound warmth. The boutique was no longer a place where customers were merely observed from a distance, but a space where they were invited to be seen as individuals, not just walking wallets. News of Melania's visit faded from the headlines, but the effects of that day continued to ripple through the boutique's culture. Helena's reputation, once built on rigid authority, was now synonymous with grace and genuine leadership. Customers who visited the boutique in the weeks that followed could sense the difference. They noticed the staff's attentiveness, the genuine smiles, the willingness to engage. Many of them were the same wealthy patrons who had come before, but now they found something more, a level of service that made them feel valued beyond their purchasing power. The boutique became known not just for its high-end merchandise, but for the quality of its experience. The stories people told about the boutique were no longer just about the luxury items it carried. They were about the way customers were treated, with respect, warmth, and humility. Helena had set the tone for a new chapter, one where the store wasn't just a showcase for exclusivity, but a place where people from all walks of life felt seen and heard. And for Helena, that transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal. The lesson she had learned from her encounter with Melania Trump, the importance of humility and respect, had fundamentally changed her outlook on leadership and her place within this world of luxury. The brand wasn't just about the price tag anymore. It was about the human connection that made the price worthwhile. And that, she realized, was the most valuable thing she could offer. As time went on, the boutique flourished, its reputation solidified by its commitment to creating meaningful, respectful experiences for every customer who walked through its doors. Helena continued to lead with integrity, reminding herself and her staff every day that luxury, in its truest form, was about more than just status. It was about how people felt when they stepped inside. The ripple effect that began with one misjudgment had turned into a wave of positive change, and in the end, Helena knew that the boutique, and she herself, were better for it.